Hi, my name is Ryan Hood, and today I am presenting to you my analysis of the book The Jungle, written by Upton Sinclair, published in 1905. The setting of The Jungle took place in the early 1900s in the industrial parts of Chicago, known as the Meatpacking District. This very industrial part of the city of Chicago was a place where there were many large business operations underway, run by wealthy people who benefited from the exploitation of many gritty people who didn't have any other source of income. This city was, and is still, a place of great abundance of corruption and lack of respect for the people that put their noses down to do the dirty work without any complaints. This piece also got my attention because I am from Chicago, and it was interesting to see how the city was described during this era. One of the major issues that Upton Sinclair focused this piece on was the mistreatment and exploitation of immigrants during this time. There were many people that came from foreign countries to live in cities in the United States that were put in tight positions financially, as there was not much opportunity for them to reach great success. The language barrier was definitely a setback for these people, resulting in many immigrants taking jobs in the meatpacking industry where language didn't matter as much. These people would be working long hours and getting paid next to nothing for their extreme efforts. In addition, Sinclair made sure to make points about the beliefs of the lower class in the city of Chicago towards the wealthy and the government. The lower class was receiving next to no health benefits, and the idea of vacation time for them was a joke. He really emphasized that money controlled their society, that it brought extreme inequality between classes and races, as the more powerful were taking advantage of the not so well off people for their own profit with no remorse. Sinclair created the character of Jurgis, who was an immigrant from Lithuania, as his main character of The Jungle. Jurgis thought to himself that in America, precisely as in Russia, there were rich men who owned everything, and if one could not find any work, was not the hunger he began to feel the same sort of hunger, on page 1151. Though he did think this, he figured out the difference between America and Russia through the voting process. Sinclair also wrote that he learned that America differed from Russia in that its government existed under the form of a democracy, on page 1152. This is where he realized that he can make a difference in society, where gritty, lower-class people like him could have a major effect when the time to vote for office came around. Though this was true, Sinclair also attempted to expose a major issue with the voting process. Jurgis was given $2 for a single vote in the election, but he found out that Jonas was given $4 to vote 3 different times in the same election. I think that Sinclair included this to show the readers the corruption and problems that the democratic process consists of, that many people during this time were very aware of, more specifically, the immigrants such as Jurgis, who was uneducated and kept in the dark for the most part when it came to complex issues like this. This idea revisits the claim that America was different than Russia because the government was supposed to be a democracy, but the country was still controlled by the greedy, well-off people that didn't care about the ethics behind a fair vote. Therefore, it was common for immigrants to be taken advantage of. The aspect of The Jungle that gets the most attention of the readers is the working conditions that the meatpacking district consisted of. The part that really caught my attention was about how these companies held their credibility and trust with the people through the people who would inspect their facilities. Sinclair wrote, "The people of Chicago saw the government inspectors in Packentown, and they all took that to mean that they were protected from diseased meat. They did not understand that these 163 inspectors had been appointed at the request of the packers, and that they were paid by the United States government to certify that all the diseased meat was kept in the state." on page 1153. This is ludicrous because they had no more authority than that, which ultimately led to the carcasses of steers, which deemed to be poisonous, as well as hogs that had been killed due to cholera, were being filtered and sold throughout the city. The more people that Jurgis would meet, the more insight he would get from the cruelties and unethical activities that were going on in each and every department. The most vivid example of their disgusting workplace was the part about the pickle rooms, which was where the meat would be preserved, or whatever you want to call their attempt to try to do so, with chemicals that were unknown or very harmful. Sinclair also wrote, "Let a man so much as scrape his finger pushing a truck in the pickle rooms, and he might have a sore that would put him out of the world. All the joints in his fingers might be eaten by the acid, one by one," on page 1156. I honestly can't wrap my head around the people that were knowingly doing this and indirectly hurting and killing innocent civilians. But I guess people were just so greedy and power hungry that being decent was not appealing to them. Sinclair also wrote about the fertilizer men, whose odor was so bad that everybody that ever visited the factory would be steered away from them because the smell was excessively potent. This image that Sinclair creates is extremely vivid and very unsettling, and it gets even worse than this. These workers were getting absolutely torn apart, conducted mostly by the people in power that were ordering them to do this work in these disgusting conditions. And to top it off, they were working at almost all times making next to nothing with no benefits. The corruption presented to us in this book is absolutely absurd. Between the inspectors being paid off to give approval of selling the diseased meat and the upper management that was allowing the work conditions to be so terrible that they were actually lethal, it sounds like it was impossible to trust anybody during this time period. The voting process that I discussed earlier is another prime example of the dirty business that was taking place during this era. Upton Sinclair was one of the most prominent muckrakers of all of American history, which means that he was a journalist who shed light on organizations and leaders that were corrupt. Sinclair's socialist beliefs are definitely justified, as he had not been dealt the best hand of cards at birth. He had been born into poverty, yet his grandparents lived as upper-class people. From what he experienced, it is fair for him to discuss the extreme inequalities that there was in the city of Chicago during this time. Money controlled society even more back then than it does now. Nowadays, work environments are exponentially safer and the lower class is being compensated much more fairly. We can give credit to Sinclair for speeding up this process. If Sinclair were living today, I don't believe he would be as against capitalism as he once was, as it is what has incentivized our society to keep progressing and become modern. We just have to keep working out the obstacles as we go to allow people to have as equal opportunities as they can to succeed. Sinclair has done so much for our country's advancement and health, shining a bright light on the evils in government and the upper class with their relationship to the lower class and the immigrants that had to start their careers from the ground up. The facts speak for themselves. The main ideas and contents of The Jungle ended up being what led Theodore Roosevelt to create the Food and Drug Administration, which still reigns today as an enforcer of good ethics and the proper labeling of what the American put in their bodies. It took an insane amount of planning and risk for Sinclair to be able to successfully pull off all the muckraking and justice that he accomplished. He set a solid base for our nation to improve upon. I believe that there should be a great stress on the importance of knowing our nation's history. As many have said before, history will repeat itself if we do not learn from our mistakes. It is incredibly important to understand the lengths that Upton Sinclair had to reach to get justice for our society. People nowadays should definitely know the details about the horrific events that were going on for years before it could really be regulated. And people should appreciate what we have today when it comes to the safety and cleanliness of the products that we consume regularly. The hints that Sinclair made at the corruption in the democratic process should also be commonly known among our people. Upton Sinclair's career as a muckraker should definitely be taught in U.S. schools for the remainder of history, as he has changed the course of our history for the better and gave us this world-renowned masterpiece, The Jungle. I got all of my information necessary to complete this project from Chapter 9 of The Jungle and the biography of Upton Sinclair.